Annoying, unfunny, misogynistic, Islamophobic, and of course, pro-Israel. The noted atheist is very, very pro the Jewish state, so much so that he can't stop lying in order to defend it. Here he is on Friday's episode of Real Time on HBO.
To me, what the Democrats are not doing with this is leading. The energy in their parties with the young people who learn everything about Israel on TikTok. They don't know shit. And their leaders are not standing up and saying, kids, you don't know what's going on here. Every war Israel has fought is a war of defense.
Right.
Every war, they were attacked first.
The kids don't know shit, Bill? Or is that you? Time for a debunking. Let's look at Israel's wars, because Israel's fought a lot of wars. But let's just take a look at three of the major ones. Who started them? First off, 1956, the Suez Crisis, also known as the Second Arab-Israeli War. Israel, Britain and France colluded together to invade Egypt and to try and topple President Nasser. Israel attacked on October the 29th and Britain and France joined 2 days later. Now, the Israelis always say that any war they start is a defensive war, a preemptive war. But we actually know that Israel, France and Britain got together to plan this war of aggression a week earlier in Sèvres, France. Even super partisan Israeli politician and historian Michael Oren admits that then Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion's plan in 1956 at Sèvres was for dividing Jordan between Israel and Iraq and Lebanon between Israel and Syria. It was a war of conquest, not defense. Israeli Colonel Mordechai Baron, who took notes at the Sèvres meeting, was embarrassed by what he heard. He later said the Israeli-British-French plan was, quote, more fitted to the kind of imperial discussions which took place at the end of the Great War and was totally out of place, he said, for the post-World War II era. Hey, Bill, it was an imperial war that Israel started in 1956. Number two, let's go to 1967, the Six-Day War, the conflict that opened the door to Israel's illegal occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights, the longest ongoing military occupation in the world. Israel attacked Egypt in June 1967 before expanding their attacks to Syria and Jordan. Now, the standard Israeli narrative is that this was a preemptive war, that President Nasser of Egypt had mobilized his forces in the Sinai, kicked out UN peacekeepers, and was about to attack Israel, and that the Jewish state's very existence, as its then Prime Minister Levi Eshkol claimed, hung on a thread. But that was all bullshit. Egypt wasn't about to attack Israel. Don't take my word for it. In 1982, the Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin admitted, and I quote, "In June 1967, we again had a choice. The Egyptian army concentrations in the Sinai approaches do not prove that Nasser was really about to attack us. We must be honest with ourselves. We decided to attack him." Did you hear that, Bill? In 1968, a year after the Six-Day War, Israel's own military chief, General Yitzhak Rabin, who went on to serve as a Nobel Peace Prize-winning Prime Minister of Israel, he told a French journalist, and I quote, "I do not believe that Nasser wanted war. The 2 divisions he sent into Sinai on May 14th would not have been enough to unleash an offensive against Israel. He knew it, and we knew it." But Bill Maher doesn't seem to know it. Multiple other Israeli officials have said the same, by the way. In the years since, one of the top Israeli generals who pushed for war in June 1967, Matityahu Peled, later said that all the talk of a threat to Israel from Egypt was nothing but a bluff. Israeli wartime cabinet minister Mordechai Bentov later confessed that this whole story about the threat of extermination was totally contrived to justify the annexation of new Arab territories. So no, the Six-Day War in 1967 wasn't a preemptive war, it wasn't a war of self-defense, it was a war of aggression and occupation by Israel against its Arab neighbors, again. And finally, number three. Let's go to Lebanon. 1982, Israel launched an illegal invasion of southern Lebanon, killing thousands of civilians and kickstarting its 18-year brutal occupation of that country. Now you might say, well, they were fighting Hezbollah. But Hezbollah didn't exist until Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982. Oh wait, but there was the PLO before that. There were Palestinian terrorists in Lebanon. In fact, the Israeli military says on its own website that what they called Operation Peace for the Galilee was launched on June the 6th, 1982, following a terrorist cell's failed attempt to assassinate the Israeli ambassador to the UK. Well, here's the slight problem. That terrorist cell wasn't from the PLO. It wasn't an assassination attempt ordered by Yasser Arafat or anyone in Lebanon. It was from the Abu Nidal organization based in Saddam Hussein's Iraq. The Abu Nidal organization that was a sworn foe of the PLO and whose leader had even been sentenced to death in absentia by the PLO. But as Israel's top general in 1982 sneered at a cabinet meeting on the eve of invading Lebanon, Abu Nidal, Abu Shmidal, we have to strike at the PLO. To be clear then, Israel used that assassination attempt on their ambassador in London to illegally invade and occupy Lebanon, which had nothing to do with it, and they did so not for self-defense or security reasons, but because they wanted to take out the PLO, and because, as historian Zachary Foster pointed out in a recent piece for Zeteo, the Zionist movement has wanted to expand Israel's borders into Lebanon for over 100 years.
There was a time when I really enjoyed Maher's show. I did not really know about his whole hatred for Islam before until he started making certain comments that really drew my attention to him. He was the one that said that where people should get over slavery, people should get over the whole idea of getting some compensation for slavery, and that slavery is something of the past. We should move on. And by the way, America or the whites weren't the only people that did slavery, even though transatlantic slave trade was the biggest in the world and it was like state run. But then again, according to Maher, that was in the past and we should just move on. And secondly, right, I have said this on this platform a couple of times, that I have never seen a situation whereby someone claims to be the victim and the perpetrator at the same time. Like, he claims to be the entity who everyone wants to hurt, who everyone wants to destroy, while at the same time, he is the one destroying all those other people. He is like the most powerful entity within the group. For the longest time, Israel would say that my Arab neighbors don't like me, they hate me. And one might be forced to ask, why? Why did they hate you? People can hate you, yes, but there would be a reason for why they hate you. Now, if one person around your neighborhood hates you, that might be that individual is maybe jealous. But when two people hate you, three people hate you, four people hate you, then I think there is a call for concern. You need to take upon yourself to re-examine yourself, to see whether or not you have done things that might have provoked those people into hating you. That would be the logical thing to do. And by the way, you cannot keep on attacking all your neighbors and expecting them to like you. You cannot say, I would go in, I would defend myself, I would do preemptive strike on these people, and I expect them to like me. It doesn't work that way. If you attack people, they will hate you. People can love those who hurt them. It's like you see the French in Africa complaining how the whole French hate in Africa has just increased. And most Africans from Central Africa and West Africa hate the French like a lot. And to the French, they cannot understand why those people in these regions hate them. And I'm like, are you really for real? Are you really serious? Like, are you really telling me that you guys understand where all this hatred might be coming from? Do I need to tell you? Really, do I need to tell you? Well, for once, you guys have stolen their future. Can we start from there? You guys have made sure that they never prosper. Can we start from there? Your whole intervention in their countries has not been of any significant benefit to them. Is that something that warrant a kind of like hatred from them? Should they hate you for doing that or not? You know? So when you see the Israelis saying that we must defend ourselves because our neighbors hate us, they too must ask themselves, why do our neighbors hate us? Why do they want to see us unalive? Why are they so focused on destroying us? And maybe they might apply a little bit of empathy. I think if they did that, they might have a closure as to the reason why their neighbors may hate them. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. You cannot expect people to like you when you constantly attack them. Israel has attacked all its neighbors, and Israel has kept on attacking its neighbors. Presently, Israel is causing a lot of havoc in Lebanon. Israel has attacked Syria. Israel has attacked Qatar, even though Qatar has had no quarrel with Israel. Israel has constantly stirred up trouble in the West Bank. Israel has built a lot of illegal settlement on Palestinian land. Israel has forcefully taken lands that belong to Palestinians. When you do all this, how do you think the people that you are doing all this to will behave towards you? Don't you think that a point will come when they will fight back? Don't you think that a point will come when they will decide that enough is enough? Let us be realistic here. And for someone like Maher, I know his whole show is dependent upon him saying things in favor of Israel and against Arab nations. I understand that. But it is quite a shame hearing that from him. Thinking that people nowadays don't know anything. Thinking that young people cannot read or they don't understand, they cannot comprehend the whole issue in the Middle East. It's so condescending. Really.